So good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you colleagues, wherever you are. Thank you for joining. My name is Mladen Paluta. I'm apologizing that you cannot see me. I'm an issue with the new laptop I'm using. I'm attending the Africa Health Conference in Johannesburg, which is one of the largest exhibition and conference, if you like, consortiums on the African continent. So many colleagues from Africa in there. So I welcome you from Africa, but also extend a welcome on behalf of all the colleagues that have joined, colleagues from the Global Clinical Engineering Alliance, as well as those from the Clinical Engineering Division of the IFMBE. So yesterday we had the first town hall. This is now the second town hall on credentialing. And many of you and us on this call are passionate about credentialing. So perhaps let me go to the next slide. Just showing the leadership teams, both from the perspective of the CED board, now led by Fabiola Martinez from Mexico, and previously for a number of years extended by COVID by our top gun, Tom Judd, under whose leadership the CED, and if you'll pardon the pun, soared to new heights and enviable heights. But colleagues from around the world, from many countries on the CED board, and likewise on the GCA Founders Council, you'll see members there from many countries and continents, and they, in a sense, are all behind this town hall as they are behind the other town halls, and we call on them also to contribute and to participate and to add to the projects that are originating and correspond to these town halls. So in terms of the agenda, I welcome and recognize all attendees. There'll be opening remarks from panelists should they wish to do so. Dan Clark from the UK has indicated that he would like to mention a few words, and the other colleagues, Fabiola, Ewa, Elliot, Adrian, please feel free to do so. We'll briefly look at different global CE credentialing models, although that's not the main purpose of this town hall, but panelists, if in presenting their opening remarks, if they are associated with a current credentialing model, would appreciate hearing from them. We also will not look in much detail at the body of knowledge and body of practice survey results that have been collected today. To date, obviously, those will inform this town hall as it will inform other town halls. And that is a crucial, if you like, updated evidence base that we need to tap into, analyze, understand, reflect upon, to get a sense of what is happening to global clinical engineering and what are the main areas in terms of both the body of knowledge and also the bodies of practice. And that takes us to the next agenda item, the regional differences in bodies of practice. We accept that there are differences not only between different regions, but also between countries in a region and even within a country. If one
Mladen, we've lost your audio. I'm afraid Mladen may have a problem with internet access.
Might have just exceeded his hotel's limit.
Well. Well, okay. Good day, everyone. This is Fabiola Martinez. And while Miladen can reach us again, why don't we begin by our opening comments as he established at the agenda. Now I'd like to invite Daniel to begin if you like to comment something, please.
Yeah, Fabiola, thanks very much. I'm happy to do that while we wait for Mladen to recover his technical difficulties. I think we all know the importance of medical equipment and technology to modern healthcare. We also know, of course, this importance of technology in modern healthcare is increasing and will continue to increase as we face huge challenges in providing healthcare around the globe. So we're going to need technology, new technology that diagnoses rapidly and accurately, preventing and reducing worsening health conditions with the personal and healthcare system burdens that they bring. We're going to need technology that treats more quickly and more fully, allowing people to be treated and discharged sooner and returning it to improved health conditions and back to their normal lives. We're going to need technology that enables us to reach people in remote settings, allows us to look after people in their own homes and in their daily lives, perhaps even technology that prevents people from becoming ill in the first place. And we need technology in the future which is going to help us reduce our carbon footprint and move us towards net zero and net zero contributions. And where is this technology going to come from? Who's going to design the technology, develop it, deploy it, and get it into clinical service? Well, that'll be clinical engineers, of course. Who's going to manage that technology, make sure it's in the right place, at the right time, in the right condition? Well, again, clinical engineers. And who's going to maintain that technology, keep it safe, keep it effective so that it continues to provide high quality healthcare for our patients? Again, of course, that's clinical engineers. So we need clinical engineers with skill, with knowledge, with experience, with expertise. In short, we need professional clinical engineers and clinical engineering practitioners. But people working in our field or people aspiring to work in our field often face challenges about becoming and maintaining their skill set, getting their knowledge, getting their experience, maintaining their expertise. Training requirements and professionalism is not always recognised for our staff, and it should be. It goes without saying that medical staff are recognised for their skill and their qualifications. The same should be true of clinical engineering practitioners. I actually spent, I'm a clinical engineer by background and training, and I've got 37 years experience as a clinical engineer. But a few years ago, I actually spent 2 years outside of healthcare. I spent 2 years working in the rock and roll industry. And that's a whole other story for another day. But when I went to work for the rock and roll industry, I was surprised, though really I should not have been, but I was surprised by just how professional a workforce that was. If you went on set at a concert, at a festival, at a gig somewhere, if you went on set, you had to have a permit to work, a passport, if you like, before they'd even allow you onto set. Other staff there, other rock and roll professionals working on set needed to be assured that you were safe and competent to work on their set. And they needed to depend on that and be assured by that. And my role for a couple of years there was to help the rock and roll industry become recognized as a professional, as a profession that supported the entertainment industry, to be recognized as safe and competent workforce. And we did that through establishing, in the UK, by establishing national qualifications. Now, the same is true, or at least sort of true, for us now as clinical engineers. There are, and as Mladen said in his introduction, we're going to have a brief overview of some of these. There are nationally recognized schemes for clinical engineers now. And we'll have a quick overview of those shortly. But what we need to look for now is making these national schemes applicable internationally somehow, so that wherever you work in the world, whatever your background, whatever the resources you have at your disposal, whatever the system that you work in, whatever the challenges that you face in your local areas, we need to have a means where your skill, knowledge, experience, and expertise can be recognized, and to have your training needs identified and your training needs met. And this then, I think, is the challenge that's facing us now as an international community. How can we establish that internationally recognized credentialing system to support all of our clinical engineers and clinical engineering practitioners wherever you are in the world? And I'm looking forward to having a debate and a discussion about those challenges and looking at what we can do to support those challenges as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. You have pointed out many important things that support the initiatives regarding the credentialing and has to be considered very seriously in order to have very effective programs for the different regions and the different needs. Thank you so much. Well, okay. Now it's turn to Mr. Elliot. Elliot, please. Good morning. Hi. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everybody around the world. Thanks for joining us. I have a lot of thoughts about this. I've been part of the U.S. certification program for many years. I helped restart the Healthcare Technology Certification Council some 21 years ago with the Healthcare Technology Foundation. I have spoken in many forums about the fact that it seems odd to me that our clinical engineering community in the past has not been interested in or supported credentialing, licensure, certification, etc. When it's become the norm. All of our clinical peers, whether they're physicians, nurses, or other allied health professionals, have licensing and credentialing as part of their way of doing business. Today, if you look at least in the U.S., many of the general industrial roles and commercial roles, people who cut your hair in the U.S. have to have licensing and credentialing in order to take a comb and put it through your hair. I think that it's critically important that we recognize that others expect us to be able to demonstrate our competency and to help them identify qualified people for the roles that we participate in. I'm very active in another international certification program, the HIMSS, a certified professional in health and information systems and certified associate, and also recently a digital health technology specialty and strategic planning. This is the norm. This is the baseline. I'm also a small plane pilot. I also have credentialing as a scuba diver. All of these are perfectly normal. People have to have a license to drive a car or ride a motorcycle. I don't see any sense in persisting in the kind of historic discomfort with credentialing, and I hear a worldwide call for a GCEA to be actively involved in nurturing and supporting such programs. And I'll also just mention that Mladen is back with us, so perhaps we should turn the floor back to Mladen in South Africa and let you take back control of the session. Welcome.
Apologies for that. That was unexpected load shedding at the hotel, no warning. But I'm back with you for the remainder of the Townhall. I'm not sure who spoke before you, Elliot. Is there anybody else of the panelists who would like to contribute, provide some input?
And here I'll comment a little more when we talk about some regional differences, but I echo both what Dan and particularly Elliot said around just an expectation. And we here have lobbied pretty hard into government to try and get credentialing sort of required as in allied health fields and that sort of thing. And I also have been there's voluntary schemes which I've very actively championed for a long time, but it's very slow in the uptake. And I'll elaborate further on just some of the, I guess, the idiosyncrasies that we see here in Australia, which I think reflect a lot of the situations we see in many other countries as well. But I echo your sentiments, Elliot, that in fact, I saw an example here where to act as or to perform the functions of a household cleaner, people were claiming to be credentialed to undertake that service. And so we really start to stand out as and people just ask the question, you know, well, who actually are you, and are you fit for purpose, essentially?
If I can jump in again, over the years, I've watched the emergence of many, many, many clinical specialties, and all of them, whether it's plastic surgery or various specialized maxillofacial dental surgery, all of them have emerged by communities of interest who have decided to sort of self-identify their specialty and their credentialing methodology. And last, I'll point out that this is a global part of a global movement to come up with unified ways of identifying respectable credentialing activities. And ISO, the International Standards Organization, has, I think, 17024 as a standard for professional credentialing. And that emerged out of the fact that you have pilots who are flying all around the world. You have people who have licenses for various specialties with air conditioning or maintaining railroads. All of those kinds of skills are skills that have to be credentialed in ways that are acceptable around the globe. Back to you.
Thank you, Elliot. Anyone else? Lee Bin, have you contributed to the discussion so far?
Hi, hello. Yeah, yeah. I'm online. Yeah, can you hear me?
Please go ahead.
Yes.
We can hear you.
Oh yeah, thank you. Invite me. Yeah, I feel so sorry that my internet is not so stable. Maybe fall down will close down sometimes. Yeah, I would for my career, I already is electrical engineer. I studied in the physics in the university, but in my postgraduate, I studied the MRI system. So I come to the hospital 22 years ago, 32 years ago. The first time to the hospital, there's no engineers in that hospital. They needed the engineers to teach them about the MRI. My major is MRI, so I'm a technical support, can support these doctors, these technicians, to how to make these programs, set up the first MRI systems in my hospital. Also, this is a very early systems in the Shanghai, even in the China. So after then, I feel I cannot do any other people to do that this kind of job, because it's skillful. It's a skillful, but some difficulty to recognized by other specialists in the hospital. The hospital doctors and the nurse have their training systems, have their credential systems, but there's no credentials for us. So that's my problem. So I cannot get my careers in the hospital. So then after then, I go back to the company. I go to the company of the GE medical company. For there, I have been trained and they be set up for, especially for the MR systems service for 2 years. And after that, the hospital feels they need some senior doctors, senior engineers to make a training for the engineer department. So ask me go back to the hospital. So then I go back to hospital. But after I went to the department of clinical engineer department, but these people that have a low training, there's no training, no credentialing, they just graduate. So also they face the same problem. How to make the long career for these people. So in the 2005, Professor Yading and Tom, many American friends, go to the China and make up a credentialing system for China. These people, CE, clinical engineers people, make the training and make the certification for the first peoples in China. So I'm the first one of this group. This one of this first group gets the certification. We get very be grateful for this certification. It helps us a lot because we can know this is recognized from others, from our colleges, from our doctors. It becomes very important. So after that, the credentialing system have been promoted in the China many provinces. Starts from 2005, and after we had also after 2010, we go to the domestic credentialing systems. Similarly, we make the training and make the examination, and if pass the examination, then we can give the certification. But it's only few people in the China, because China is so big, too many engineers in the hospitals. But these years, we also make the different programs, especially in the some special area, especially for some quality control, sometimes for the management of the equipment, especially several times. But as our experience in the China, this credentialing is very important. So for our clinical engineer, so if we get the some standards, some the officials credentialing from especially for the WHO, or the officially give some name of give the certifications, give our support. Maybe we can go forward and get more improved in the hospitals. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lieben. Really appreciate it. I think you've provided a very detailed look at your situation in China, but I think it provides a very useful narrative, almost a narrative template that perhaps other countries could look to and equally provide those kinds of rich reflections that'll certainly serve to support credentialing that is country-based and also region-based. So thank you for those words, Lieben. Ricardo Silva has joined us, just joined us, and I would like to ask Ricardo also to express a few words from his perspective. Ricardo, floor is yours.
Yeah, hello. Thank you, Mladen. Good morning, afternoon, evening to everyone. I am past president of the Health Technology Certification Commission. That's the body responsible for accreditation of clinical engineers here in the United States. HTCC has actually evolved throughout the years in order to try to catch up to the profession. But like Elliot had said before, the profession is growing worldwide, and this is a global movement for accreditation. I had been approached by the Middle Eastern societies who are working on their own accreditation program. The country of Peru, through their School of Engineers, is actively working on an accreditation program. Mexico, and Fabiola is here as well, it's also working on an accreditation program. So this is definitely a global movement, and we need to sum our efforts so that this process can be not necessarily unified, but at least homologous amongst different countries in the world. So when we say this is a clinical engineer or a clinical engineer with information technology capabilities, everyone around the world knows what is the difference between the two, and that each has specific knowledge and expertise that can move across. So that's what I can bring from my perspective. Oh.
Thank you, Ricardo. Really appreciate that. So, colleagues, if we could go back to the presentation and the agenda, then, unless any other colleague from any country that's got a certification system, colleagues from Ireland or Canada, or others would like to quickly contribute. Anyone? If not, then if
Eva, sorry, Eva is with the hand raised.
Eva, please.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Because I would like to pay attention for some aspects which are, I think, which we have not enough recognized and not enough worked on, because of course international credentialing is necessary, and it is very important project, and it for sure will have very great significance and impact on international community. But the rationale for this is that in the global market of medical equipment, when we have the same equipment in all countries, the technical staff, engineers, have to have the same competencies. So it is the main rationale for necessity of international credentialing and for establishing, of course, the body of knowledge and practice and references. But one aspect which I would like to underline is that the efforts should be done in parallelly in three ways, because we concentrate on this establishing of standards, but parallelly we should also work on promotion and on legislation, because when we will establish international certification, international certificates, it have to be honored by governments, by international organizations, and so on. So I think that we should think what is the way to achieve this, because those certificates have to have a great value, yes, but have to be honored too. But another one issue is that those references are not only, the standards are not references, but those are also a big challenge for each countries, for each clinical engineering societies in each countries to development, and will be also stimulation for activity and for development. And on this way, countries which would like to improve their level of education have to meet guidelines. And of course, it would be different for different countries, because in different countries, certification and education is on different level. So each country will need some points and some guides and some support for developing. My point of view is from the country where there is no education actually at all. So some time ago, I have proposed Model 5 for certification, because we have defined four models. So I proposed Model 5 for countries which do not have these possibilities at all. And today I would like to share with you with our experiences, because it of course maybe defined when we have started to prepare for this procedures of education. So, but maybe not at this moment. But so in summary, I would like to point also the problem of promotion of certification and the idea and the model of some legislations which will cause that this certification will be honored in different countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eva. Of course, you've been one of the passionate advocates for credentialing, and you've always presented a very eloquent, but I think also a rational and a well thought out case, and particularly, for the importance of credentialing in your own country. But of course, you're also linking up with issues around policy and the impact that clinical learning practitioners can have and should have within the broader health system, and then the legislation and regulations that then should support that. I think I learned only the other day, I think through Yadin, that in Japan, in fact, there's an act called the Clinical Engineering Act that legislated that clinical engineering practitioners need to be in healthcare facilities performing certain designated and important roles in much the same way as medical physicists in many countries are legislated to serve in support of radiation oncology. So thank you, Eva, for that contribution.
Thank you very much.
And I think you've actually already moved us on to this next slide that we're looking on now, which is taken from it's just a sample from the latest body of knowledge and body of practice survey. And I guess for us in this town hall, it also illustrates, well, I guess the huge opportunity, but also the challenges that we face. If we look at top left, in terms of primary nature of your job, we will see the very broad range of job descriptions, at least as provided by colleagues in the survey. And so the question is, what is the granularity of any international credentialing system we set up? Obviously, one size does not fit all, but then by the same token, we cannot fit all sizes and meet all needs. So I think that is one important issue that perhaps we can discuss. The next one along also indicates important new areas. Ricardo Silva, Elliot are very much in the digital health space, but also issues around cybersecurity, and then robotics, fourth industrial revolution, 3D printing. Those are all impacting now in the healthcare space. And what is the new knowledge? What are the new practices that clinical engineering and health technology managers need to acquire to be competent in that space? If we look here, particularly at the African region, there's a great need for a certification program in the African region. So this amplifies, I guess, what Eva said about the country of Poland. And clearly, the need is coming through loud and clear through the survey about the need for a certification program, and that brings us to this town hall. So if we can go to the next slide.
Mladen, sorry, Janine
Yes.
would like to comment something. I open his mic.
Yes, please. Thank you, Fabiola.
Sorry, Mladen. Did not mean to interrupt you, but appreciate.
No, please go ahead, Yadin. Your comments are always welcome.
But I appreciate the opportunity. So, as I'm listening to this session, I have several lessons I'm taking home with me. One is that all of you are talking about the progress in the recognition for need to be specific about what is clinical engineer and the duties, body of knowledge that is required to support the practice. All of you are talking about how the field is progressing and the realization that more and more regions of the world are saying government getting involved in the process. The example you gave, Meladen, about Japan is absolutely correct. And yesterday, Ricardo, Tom, myself, and Fabiola were on the program at the Latin America Biomedical Engineering Annual Meeting, Caleb. And we did talk about credentialing and certification. And we learned that Argentina has a government act as well, demanding clinical engineer expertise at the point of care. So there are very nice development and good timing for us to bring the issue not at country level, but international. But the point I would like to make is that it seems like we are bringing the horse to the water, but nobody wants to drink. It's a little bit bold statement, but after all these years, I am surprised why it takes so much effort to convince our own colleagues that they need a tool to demonstrate competency. Why clinical engineers, and then talked about rock and roll industry, and Elliot talked about scuba diving and piloting, why it's so simple for other occupations to say, we need some demonstration for the public to appreciate our skills so we can practice in this occupation. We published an article last year at the Journal of Clinical Engineering about the difference between occupation and profession. And the conclusion was that clinical engineering is a profession, but if it is, a profession demand that there will be a public admission of skills and competencies that are qualified individual to practice. We need to find a way to make clinical engineers desire to become certified, more than just because the government is telling us, more than just because there is some authority that otherwise would cut our career short, but because we feel as individuals that we serve public safety and public experience at the point of care. And if we are not there, maybe the outcome will be not as planned, and that's not a good outcome. So the point I would like to make with you, Meladen, is that I think that on the agenda, we need to find a point where we say, we bring the horse to the water now, make sure that the horse is thirsty and want to drink, and not just being forced to be there. Thank you.
If I may speak to that, colleagues and Yadin, among the realities, whether it's engineering or flying planes, people who have been practicing in the field for many years have a reasonable basis for saying, well, I've been doing a fine job. Why should I have to go get a different credential in order to continue doing my job? If you look at the ISO 17024 professional certification framework, it allows the bodies to recognize years of experience. It allows the bodies, in fact, mandates that the bodies create programs that allow onboarding. It can't go on forever. It can't be inappropriate. There can't be wholesale grandfathering of people into jobs if they don't have contemporary skills. But I don't think we have done a very good job in the past in actually making it relatively easy and painless for people who are practitioners in the field to obtain such credentialing. I'll admit for myself, I worked with ECRI in industry for 25 years before I sat for the test for the clinical engineering certification in the US. I had to actually do that work. But I was given credit for the work that I had done. I was given credit for the academic work that I had done during my master's and doctorate, and yet I still had to pass the tests. And I think that, one of our questions in the Q&A area was related to, well, I've had 20, 30 years of experience. How do I get such certification? What's its value to me? There's a chicken and egg. And so I think it's really a challenge that we can face. I think there are credentialing resources that we have looked at, GCEA. And one of the things that GCEA could do is become there's a certifying body, a body that certifies the groups that certify. And that would be a way to make it more efficient. That doesn't dictate content of the credentialing. It talks about impartiality. It talks about avoiding conflicts of interest. It talks about validating of tests and requirements, but it doesn't talk about content. Content is a separate issue. Just want to kind of reply. We have we have a Q&A area, and we're replying to that Q&A question live. So hopefully it satisfies that question and also speaks a little bit to your concern, Yadin.
Thank you, Elliot, and thank you, yes, colleagues, for responding to the Q&A. Also, an open invitation to everyone in this town hall. If you do have a question, please post it in the Q&A, or if you'd like to comment, we'd love to hear your comments in the chat room. Can I just confirm that you can see my screen?
Yes.
Thank you. It'd be wonderful if I could advance my screen. Let's see. There we go. So these were the suggested next steps that came with the invite to this town hall. So you can see the goal, if you like, is global accreditation of regional and country certifying bodies, recognizing that there are differences in regions and countries, as has been so eloquently laid out, first by Lee Bin and then by Eva, and then amplified, I think, in terms of content that corresponds to certification by Elliot, Ricardo, Dan. So the intention is also to establish an international exam, and we've already met a number of times on this and felt that the way to do that would be to recognize that there is general agreement and alignment in terms of content for different clinical juring practitioners. So there would be, in terms of weighting for the content of such an exam, 80% would be global content or content that is globally applicable, but then allowing 20% in terms of weight for content that is local, whether that is regional, national, or even sectoral. We are already, and we will continue to look at evidence that comes from the survey in terms of body of practice. I've already alluded to the issue of different types of practitioners or cadres of practitioner, and these need to be respected, understood. They also need to be aligned because for one, colleagues in the African region, often they are clinical engineering practitioners, but they refer to themselves as biomedical engineers. And that must be respected because there are historical reasons for that being the case. We've also said that we really need to, if you like, get activities going per region. There's already been one whip around that, but to further hold regional webinars to get, first of all, the discussion going within the regions, and I'll come to in my next slide what those regions could be. Of course, you're welcome to comment on my proposal. And then, as I started the slide, was reference to an international competence exam. But of course, recognizing that competencies includes demonstrated skills. So again, the devil is always in the detail. You know, can one truly assess competencies by means of an exam, particularly one that might be administered in online fashion? But moving on to the next slide. We are building on what has gone before, and some of you may be familiar with this, some of you not. But in 2005, led by Joachim Nagel, who was president of the IFMB more or less at about that time, as part of a Biomedea project in Europe, there was a build-up to this get-together in Stuttgart, Germany, in 2005, which was international with international representation, including WHO. And there were two main outputs from that meeting. What you see before you is the first. It was a protocol for the training of clinical engineers in Europe. And you can see they covered much of the ground that we are currently covering in terms of, what is the definition of clinical engineering? What is the role of clinical engineering practitioners of different types? What training is required? And then, of course, introducing international perspectives, particularly from bodies such as the ACCE and countries that have established, training programs and that have credentialing systems already, and then focusing specific on Europe, and then as addendi or annexures or appendices, addressing some of the issues that we've already addressed so far in this town hall. If you go to the next one, this is the second output, which was a proposal to establish international register of clinical engineers or engineering practitioners, basically based on mutual recognition of qualifications and perhaps with some additional criteria. You can see also the path that was tread then, which is something similar to what we are going over again now, and we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Historical backgrounds, the mechanisms of registration. So importantly, in terms of this particular report, there was a recommendation that an international registration board for clinical engineering credentialing be established. There was a report back at that time, particularly from the Biological Engineering Society of the UK. So we don't have much time left, so I'm going to continue if you don't mind. If somebody would like to intervene, interject, please do so, and Fabiola will alert me to that. So as I see it, these are some of the key issues. So yes, we talk about international credentialing, but always why? What is the end goal? And it would be useful whether you respond in the chat or whether participants in this town will respond offline afterwards, and we will provide email addresses both for Fabiola as chair of the CED and myself with my GCEA hat on. We'd love to hear from you what you see as the end goal for credentialing. For the profession, if you have a comment specific to the profession, for your own region, for your country, for your national society, or for yourself as an independent clinical engineering practitioner. The other point that I'd like to put on the table here in this town hall, we speak about clinical engineers, but then we've always understood that we are actually referring to a broader church or a broader tent, as was referenced in a meeting earlier this week about clinical engineering practitioners. But we also accept that there is large overlap between clinical engineering and health technology management. And in some perspectives and in the minds of some stakeholders, they are equivalent. I would put it to you, to this town hall, that they are not equivalent for the reason that certainly in my own experience in South Africa, many of my provincial counterparts as provincial directors of health technology did not come from an engineering background, but from a medical physics or from a nursing or from a radiographer background. But yet they were excellent health technology managers, and what they do and their roles and responsibilities align very closely with what clinical engineering practitioners do. So I would put it on the table and propose that we talk about CE and HTM in much the same way as we refer to the International Conference on Clinical Engineering and Health Technology Management. And lastly, I've introduced to you the concept of the International Register, which was first forwarded in that 2005 Biomedia project report. Again, we'd love to hear your thoughts on whether you think an international register has value. I think from what Eva said, she would feel strongly that it has. But again, we would like to hear from you again, either in the chat or offline afterwards, as to what your thoughts are for the international register, and perhaps even how that could be managed and administered. I have some polling questions, but because of logistics and challenges experienced before the meeting, mainly myself in rushing from one venue to another, these are the questions that we were going to poll, and we will send these to you afterwards to the participants, and we would really love to hear your responses to these. So we would like to know, what region are you from? Just from a quick look at participants in this call, I think all regions are covered. The question is, which regions would we use? And the one suggestion is that we use the 6 regions that the WHO uses, which is one for the Americas, one for Africa, one for the Eastern Mediterranean, one for Europe, one for Southeast Asia, and one for the Western Pacific. And then, do you support the broader phrasing, as I've put it to you, of clinical engineering and health technology management combined? Then, are you aware of formal training and competency protocols or standards in your region? And can you access continuing professional development interventions or training that support these standards? Then, as a heading, what is the biggest challenge you personally face, and perhaps your colleagues who might not be in this call, but you might be aware of what their perspectives are? What is the biggest challenge they face with regards to training and competency? Is it available protocols or standards? In other words, is there a framework? If there is a framework and standards, are there training programs that are available? If they are available, is the major challenge resources to be able to access the training? And if it's yes to all of those, well, perhaps you're so busy doing what you are doing, delivering value and supporting healthcare delivery, that you find it difficult to make the time to access this training. And those are all valid concerns and issues that we have. And we'd love to hear from you as to what, in your perspective, those challenges are. And then what would help you access these training programs? Would it be recognized standards, recognized internally? Again, we come to the issues that Eva raised, and also that Li Bin shared with us in the context of China. Would it be the lack of local training providers, if those could be empowered? And I think we have many willing, hands and minds in this town hall, but also, as a whole. I showed you the leadership teams from both the CED and the GCA, but also there's a greater network. So I think with the goodwill that has been created through the COVID pandemic, and then also through Global CE Week, not only this time, but in previous years, certainly I think there would be many hands that would be very keen to come and contribute in terms of upskilling and training the trainers. And then also the challenge of online training and connectivity, that remains a challenge in some settings, in some countries, and what can be done to facilitate that. And then last but not least, and I've posed this question to you already, do you support the concept creation of an international CEP and HTM register? So I think I will stop there, and now I'll hand over and open the floor to anyone from panelists, participants who would like to comment. If you've got colleagues who'd like to respond to any additional questions that might have been posed or comments posed in the chat, please go ahead.
I'd like to give the floor to Jadine, since he is publishing a very important message to the chat.
Please, Yadin. Yadin?
Yes, thank you. The obvious difference that exists in the world is containing also in clinical engineering education, practice, and licensures or certification. So we are recognizing that, and I think that international or global certification program, like Iwa said, need to begin with the education part, and the academia need to take a proactive role in that, continue with the professional societies, and Elliot wisely recognized that there is an international standard, the ISO 17024, that suggests how a certifying body can operate. And then the audience or the clients of such a program, the clinical engineers, the technologists, and the technician, need to stand in line and desire to demonstrate their competency through such a program. So I would suggest that our joint effort of establishing an international body is exactly on target, and we need to begin with bringing in the common, most basic requirement that everybody would say we need to comply with, from Japan, China, to UK and US and Brazil and Mexico. There are some common elements everybody should be part of and complying with. We don't need to go to the extreme of demand on knowledge that is not pertinent in other parts of the world, but there are some basic characteristics and skills that everybody expects the clinical engineering profession to practice. So I suggest that the next step should be trying to come up with those elements and identify if those elements are acceptable, then we can say an international body can address credentialing criteria for those common elements. And this will be a basic understanding of what the world is saying and clinical engineers, technologists, and technicians should have. So I bless the progress that has been made. Meladen, you showed us nicely the history all the way from European IFMBE startup. And now we need to come and say, take those details and actually put it out as, here are the threshold. Those are the bars that everybody agree is acceptable throughout the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Yadin. Would anybody else like to comment?
Dan Clark.
Thank you, Fabiola. Very, very quickly, Mladen, thank you so much. This has been a really enlightening hour session, and I've been really pleased to be a part of it. Obviously, I'm a member of this panel and I've done work in this area, so I'm very supportive of the motives and the direction of travel that we're trying, that you're trying to progress and the group are trying to progress, and we'll continue to be a part of that. I just wondered whether there's one more action we perhaps should put on our list, which is about getting ourselves as a profession behind this. I go back to your analogy, or somebody's analogy earlier about the horse to water time. If the horse in that example is the wider clinical engineering profession, we have really got to get on board with this. If we are trying to persuade people that we're a profession and we should be registered, we should have a credentialing system, we should have standards to work to, then every single one of us who work in this industry and work in this profession need to get behind that. The people on the panel are clearly already converts to this cause, and a lot of us are, and there's a lot of goodwill in this. But I was disappointed recently in the UK, where you might think there's already a head of momentum here, but I was disappointed recently in the UK. We held a hackathon where we brought together about 500 practitioners in the field of clinical engineering to look at what the challenges are in clinical engineering. And registration was one of the questions that we're asking about. In the UK, you have to be registered, state registered for certain healthcare professions. So obviously doctors and nurses and physiotherapists and radiographers. And as I think you said earlier, Mladen, healthcare scientists, which includes physicists. So if you're a graduate clinical engineer acting as a healthcare scientist, you must be state registered. And we are, but a lot of our practitioners at technician level are not, and they don't need to be. And we held this hackathon about how we could help people get registered and whether we're, and maybe 40–50% of the audience, the participants, saw no value in it. And if the people that we're trying to support to get registered see no value in it, we're really on an uphill struggle. Now there's huge value in it, and I think we're talking about sticks and carrots. But there's huge value in it. Ultimately, we might find that our regulators, I use the word very loosely, demand that we become registered, in which case we won't be able to be clinical engineers if we're not. That's a big stick. But I think we're more about carrots at the moment. Why would you want to become registered? Why would you want to be part of a credentialing system and get recognized for that? And it's one, pride in our service. It's two, the ability to move from hospital to hospital and country to country. But above all, it's why should we not be able to demonstrate our competence? At the end of the day, we have a hugely impactful role on patient care. On the quality of lives of hundreds of thousands, millions of people across the globe. We need to be able to demonstrate that we do that to the very best of our abilities, and our abilities are assured. And when we become that professional, when we become recognized for doing that, then we will find ourselves sitting at the same table as consultant medics and making decisions about healthcare. And ultimately, those decisions will be informed by engineers, and ultimately that will be to the benefit of the patients that we serve. So I think there's an extra action. Sorry, I've been talking for too long. There's an extra action we need to put in here about convincing ourselves, each and every one of us who work in this field, that credentialing, registration, whatever we end up calling it, is an absolute necessity of our profession. And it's the way that our profession will raise its profile, get more resources, and increase our own ability to improve healthcare.
Dan, good points. Could I speak to that briefly, Mladen? If we use the ISO 17024 as just a sort of a yardstick, it does allow in the bootstrapping of a credentialing environment to have some form of grandfathering based on professional experience and practice. It doesn't allow it to be an open-ended forever gate. It doesn't allow people to come back 10 years later and say, oh, I want retrospective recognition. And it also requires that if you are recognized, you have to be able to show ongoing education and ongoing competency, support, and development. So it says you don't just get into the club and, you can't fly planes forever. You need to recertify depending on your responsibilities twice a year in each aircraft in various weather and emergency conditions. And I think that, it's a responsible behavior. As you said, we're responsible for millions of lives, not hundreds of thousands of lives. And we're responsible for billions of dollars of expenses around the world. We owe it to ourselves, our families, our communities to step up the game.
Thank you, Elliot. Yeah, so excellent comments as well, and thank you, Dan, again. Adrian, I see your hand, then Ewa.
Yeah, just wanted to pick up on a point that Yadin touched on, is that whether what's people's experience is in having access to good academic programs that adequately prepare people for CE roles. And we find here in this country that there are almost none. And so people come out out of an undergraduate program, very generalist and not at all focused on CE as a profession and as a vocation. Do people experience similar frustrations and challenges around that?
Well, I'll speak to that briefly. When I went to university, there were no such programs, and lots of people have graduated out of chemical, electrical, mechanical, and other disciplines in engineering. I think we're not granting degrees. We're looking at professional competency, skills, and knowledge. So I don't think there's a need to have a bachelor's or master's or doctorate in clinical engineering in order to enter this this field. I think there's a lot of options available that we should be looking at, and it's probably different in different countries.
Yeah.
May I? Okay. Thank you very
Eva.
much. Yes.
Go ahead.
I would like to return to Yadin's comment, because I believe that my intention was partially to answer those questions, because I wanted to pay attention on those two aspects of credentialing, except of body of knowledge and practice, which we have concentrated till now. It is one is promotion. Promotion, it is just to show clinical engineers and societies and governments why it is necessary. And another one is legislation. What I mean, it is those are activities which will result in this, that this certificate will have value. It will be valid for something, because when we want to convince clinical engineers to make an effort and get certificates, they will ask why you need it for, yes? So I think that these promotions, just showing that it is necessary and also showing benefits from this, it is very important. And also this registration, because of course everybody will need to know what it is, why it is necessary. But why it is necessary? Because due to responsibility. It is, of course, it is profession, and because it is profession, it needs a certification, because in each professions which have direct contact with patients, the competencies have to be certified. I think that it is really a very reasonable concept in Poland, because we have professions which is called professions applied in medicine. It is medical physics, engineering, and psychology, and so on. And all those professions require certification and require specialization, which is delivered by the same institution as medical specializations. It is postgraduated 3 years old specialization, which is ended with the state exam. But why it is necessary? Because it is a profession which has very, very big responsibility, and patients have to be sure that person which is taking care of him has the highest qualities. Of course, there is a, so I think that it is clear, yes. And what about very experienced clinical engineers? Of course, there have to be a way to certificate such experienced specialists without necessity of education. So it was some time ago, it was such in Poland, so I am one of them, because it was necessary to create such a staff of specialists. So there was a possibility to apply to Minister of Health, showing our experiences, and at least there are 10 such people in Poland which have been certified by Ministry of Health based on the experience. So I think, of course, it will be not possible to ask experienced specialists to take education, of course. So it's a solution. But of course, question is benefits, because people which will take such effort have to see clear benefits. So what can it be? Of course, possibilities of career, of professional development, for example, different highest positions, and of course highest salary. Maybe it is worth to consider that some areas of clinical engineering will be available for certified specialists, which is much more responsible. So I think that it is very important, and it was my intention to pay attention of this, that we should, parallelly with efforts done for body of knowledge and practice, also be prepared for realization of this, because I see that there are some aspects which have, and some problems which have been solved, but I think that everything is clear. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eva. Elliot, were you responding to Eva, or a different point, in which case I would then go to Yadin?
A different point, so you can come back to me after Yadin.
Okay, Yadin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mladen. I'm fine. I'm listening carefully and would give the floor back to you.
I'd like to comment, Yadin, on the link to a paper you've put in the chat, just that everyone's aware of that.
Yes, I appreciate the opportunity. A group of senior practitioners and academicians in the field of clinical engineers got together last year. All of them are members of the Global Clinical Engineering Alliance, representing US, Brazil, Greece, South Africa, Italy, UK, Japan, Canada, are all authors on this paper that is called "Is Clinical Engineering an Occupation or Profession?" And what drove us is this question of, we all are very much concerned about what can we do to make patient care safer, more appropriate, with efficient financially system consumption of resources, and see to it that at the end of the day, we go home satisfied that we make a difference, that we contributed to improve all those elements. And if we do that day in, day out, what is the difference between just being an employee and an occupation, just like we have plumbers and carpenters and electricians in the field, and being a professional, which require a little bit more demonstration of specific competency and training accomplished in order to deliver services. The article identified the differences between occupation and a profession, and make the point that to be a profession, you are obligated to have a public demonstration of competency that is unique to the area that you practice in, and that contribute to the public welfare overall, and that you are behaving ethically, professionally, and with utmost concern for patient, not for your own benefit or your own career. That means that you need to be trained, as you all said, need to have continued education throughout life. That means that you are willing and desire to take examination and show that you are knowledgeable in the field, that you participate in professional activity, meeting congresses, that you are writing professional papers that are accepted in the literature, and that you're ethically pass judgment on important equipment that is functioning in and around patients. All those are things that we do without the demonstration. And I think that Dan is correct that we need to develop maybe a training to educate the clients of this program, the clients of this competency demonstration, and show them that it is good for the long term to have a profession and demonstrate the requirement to practice in it, or else will become just a replaceable employee that will not be happy with our careers and will not have satisfaction that we make the world better. Thank you.
Thank you, Adine. Really appreciate that. And yeah, just a quick comment. I agree with what you've said, and I agree with what Elliot shared in the chat. Likewise, Adrian. I think the question, certainly the question in South Africa, is that that's all accepted, and yet clinical engineering is seen as not, quote unquote, real engineering. And does not have the same status as quote unquote real engineering, whether it's civil, structural, mechanical, chemical engineering, often because of the connotation that if those engineers get it wrong, lives could be lost, buildings could collapse, machinery could explode, and yet I think we've got an even better proposition, that we actually save lives or contribute towards saving lives, and as has been well demonstrated during the COVID pandemic. So part of, I think, my concern is how do we engage with engineering certification bodies, professional engineering certification bodies, and put across a value proposition that equals or even betters those that have been accepted for decades, regarding other engineering professions. So that's just one quick comment. I'd also like to welcome Jim Weir, who has joined us. Jim, I don't know how long you've been here, but I've noticed that you are in the room. So welcome. Jim has been celebrating his birthday. So once again, happy birthday, Jim, from all of us. But right now, I'd like to go and hand the floor to Ricardo Silva, who has some interesting slides to share with us, and we will come back to this discussion, as well as follow up on any discussion that follows Ricardo's presentation. Ricardo, over to you.
Thank you, Mlad, and I'm gonna try to be as quick as possible here. So I think this illustrates all the points we've been talking about. Clinical engineers do lots of things around the world, and like you said before, or Jadine said before, a profession is an occupation that involves specialized education and training. Do we need specialized education and training for clinical engineering? I definitely think yes. And I'm just going to demonstrate with a couple of cutting-edge technologies that are becoming part of the field. So telemedicine is ubiquitous right now. Are we ready with all of the technologies, wearables, Internet of Medical Things, to install, configure, calibrate, train, administer, maintain? How about drones? Drones are becoming very important all throughout Africa, Australia, and even some places in Latin America and the US. Can we operate, maintain, improve on the technology? How about virtual and augmented reality that is becoming part of medical profession? Do we know how to design, install, maintain, and accredit facilities for virtual and augmented reality in surgery, for example? Or artificial intelligence and big data for diagnostic, prevention, research, adverse effect, population health? Are we competent in information technology, networking, cybersecurity? the field of clinical engineer looks more like this than a typical maintenance room. Here is a proposed definition for clinical engineering information technology. There's a maturity model that was proposed by the World Health Organization and the Pan American Health Organization. Can we tie up clinical engineering competences to the maturity model such that we have different training, certificates, and accreditation for engineers that are capable of performing in the different levels of maturity? And perhaps the highest level of maturity is what's being defined as the clinical system engineer. And I totally agree with Elliot. I think the best way to do it is through the ISO 17024 certification program. If the CED Global embraces this and becomes the organization that accredits the other bodies, then we can move in the right direction. That's all I had to share with you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ricardo. Very, very important, to the point, but also very important contribution. Elliot, is that a new hand, old hand?
Yes, it's a new hand, and I've been typing, and I'll put it down now. Further, just for definitions that might be useful for us as we talk about 17024, ISO as a standard. And again, we don't necessarily need to use that as our tool, but it is a very well-recognized international framework. The scheme holder is the organization or body that wants to create these professional certifications. So I'll give an example in the U.S. In creating certified electronic medical records, the U.S. government became the scheme holder. They said we wanted to have all of our electronic health records meet certain technical and performance and security standards. Then a certifying body was selected that would become the organization that would oversee the actual certifying organizations. And that became the part of the Office of the National Coordinator, and ANSI became the sort of the certifying body. And then individual certifying organizations had to apply for recognition and submit to audits and quality controls in order to do the certification. And in fact, there were occasional lapses and failures that were corrected. But it's a series of levels, and each group it doesn't have the ability to tamper with the senior group above it. There's insulation and isolation and partitioning of responsibility. So what might that look like in our community? A GCEA could be the scheme holder. GCEA could be part of or help create an overarching certification commission, and then all of the various national certification agencies could apply for recognition to such a program. That's just a general framework. That's the ISO language. I'm sure there are others that are recognized, but wanted to get that on the table. Thanks.
Thank you, Elliot. And now my colleague from the African region, Ashinafi, welcome. Your comments, please.
Thank you so much, Mladen. Thank you, everybody. So can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes, thank you so much. First, I want to say thank you for the organizers for organizing such an important meeting. And I'm so sorry that I missed yesterday's meeting because there was a time confusion. So my point is specifically on clinical engineering. I had a discussion with some professionals and leaders about the clinical engineering or biomedical engineering aspect, why it has taken so long to be credited in different parts of the university, as well as in different sectors where our professionals are working. They're not considered as real professionals. They are just considered as maintenance engineers, or they are just called for only for doing some clinical engineering activity. So we had a lot of discussion, but one of the idea that I have captured is they are really concerned that the multidisciplinary nature of the profession, clinical engineering, it has a multidisciplinary nature. It has the electrical engineering part, the electromechanical part, the IT, and different professional aspects are also touched by this clinical engineering or biomedical engineering. So that multidisciplinary nature of the field has its own advantage as well as disadvantage. So every time we raise concern about clinical engineering as a profession, or the right for our profession to be maintained, or the right of the professionals to get recognition or credentialing, the other professions like pharmacists, doctors, health officers, laboratory technologists, electrical engineers, electromechanical engineers, IT experts, for example, in telemedicine, in artificial intelligence. There are the computer science professionals who are highly engaged in developing softwares which are going to be applicable on a human being. So this has an advantage of being a multidisciplinary in a way that it can gather many professionals together, but it has also a disadvantage in a way that the other professionals are saying this is our territory, this is our territory, and it's difficult for us to be recognized and to get the credit that we deserve. That's what I think Yadin and Mladen and all of you can comment on that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Afshanafi. Welcome comments. Yadin, is that an old hand? New hand?
Sorry, that's old one.
Would anybody else like to comment? The floor is open, as I said. I could just comment, there is a question from Mario Medvedev from Croatia, a very specific question around exact requirements. Mario, I'll address that in my final slide. The answer to your question is that we don't have that framework, that structure right now, but that is certainly something we're working towards.
I'll add some other thoughts. In the ISO scheme, each participant is always at risk of losing their credentials. That's the certifying body, the certifying and testing agencies, and the individual, if they have falsified or otherwise violated the framework of quality and requirements for the program. So people have lost their various licenses, testing agencies have lost their testing ability, people have lost their ability to display the seal or to market in the marketplace. Ultimately, everyone has to be at risk. There can't be sort of a carte blanche. A surgeon has to show continuing education and qualifications to do their job. An anesthesiologist, a plumber, an air conditioner repair person, an aircraft mechanic. So part of this framework is a living framework. And I'll just comment a thought I had yesterday during the discussion about the body of knowledge is I suggest we also need to look at the gaps in our body of knowledge. Just testing people to our current awareness of what we are doing doesn't mean we've failed to identify things we should be doing. And that's an area for us to think about. And that's part of the quality improvement process. It's also looking at root cause of systemic failures, whether it's supply chain failures or failures for managing emergency resources, as we experienced in the US when we went to our emergency product supply and found we had obsolete ventilators and inadequate PPE resources. There's a lot involved here and a lot of opportunity. And I put in the chat box earlier another comment, which is that we can't wait for other people to give us permission to do this. Plastic surgeons didn't wait for someone to say, oh, it's okay for you to break off from surgery and become a specialized area. Anesthesiologists didn't wait for someone to give them permission to develop their field. My father was a radiologist, and all of the various subspecialties like interventional radiology didn't come with permission of the existing framework. It came with the organizations, the communities self-forming. They created their own professional colleges, they created their own journals, they created their own bodies of knowledge and testing, and then they went to the various licensure organizations and said, look, we're a fully formed profession, and we expect to be acknowledged, and we also expect, let's say, other surgeons not to represent that they're plastic surgeons if they have not learned the microsurgical tools and skills needed to do this job. So I think we're at a point where GCEA, with Yadin's leadership and the Founders Council leadership, has created a lot of this already. We have the journal, we have colleges, we have a body of knowledge surveys. A lot of opportunities are really already created. So, the ball really is in our court to move this forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Elliot. Ricardo?
Yes, I just want to expand on what Elliot was saying, and I can talk from my own experience. When I was last in Ecuador, I was president of provost of a community college, and we did become an accredited entity under the 17024. So formal education and professional certification can coexist, and they can complement each other. For example, we had a degree on networking technologist. So they studied all of the formal training in networking technologies, but we also teamed up with Cisco, and they could get Cisco certified. So that was a certificate. So the fact that you're a networking technology doesn't necessarily verify or certify that you know how to install a specific piece of technology. And this is very important. The fact that you go through the university and you become a biomedical engineer and you have a master's in clinical engineering doesn't necessarily certify the compliance to perform under a specific standard or guidance. So the 17024 certified specific competences under specific standards and guiding documents. And that's why they support and complement each other. So yes, we need formal education, but yes, we also need the continuous education and the professional certificates to attest that you know how to do what you're claiming you're capable of doing. So just to complement. Over.
Thank you, Ricardo. Other colleagues?
Yeah,
Lieben.
go on.
Fabiola, please. You've been very
Sorry,
quiet.
I'd like to introduce Rosanna, since she has a very important comments to share with us. So if I may, I will open the mic to her.
Of course. Rosanna, welcome.
Hello.
Now.
Okay, hello. Yes, it's about the credentialing issue, like not just to accomplish technical objectives, but also in this framework we are living globally, and a strategic one. And it's a strategic step, and I agree to Ricardo Silva stating the point that in the region, for example, Latin America, Mexico, Peru, we are working very hard and not waiting with the hands in the table. We are working out of the university, with the university, out of the ministry, with the ministry, because this effort should go beyond the interinstitutional, even interinstitutional dynamic. Healthcare system cannot wait for this to happen. Safety of the patient, quality of the services, as Yadin has stated, requires this issue to be accomplished in short term. So I am very glad to say that in the case of Peru, we are working since now it's going to be like 2.5 years in a strong national program to accomplish the certification as soon as possible. And this effort is led by the Peruvian College of Engineers, but in interaction with the Mexican, the College of Colegio de Ingenieros de Mexico. So it's just a master step. Congratulations to the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosanna. Thank you. Fabiola, is
Thanks.
that your hand to comment?
Yeah, thank you.
Please go ahead.
I just want to put on the table there is a kind of issue between academics and professional preparation. Ricardo is very right to say that we can live together and we can cooperate in order to have a very complete preparation for our professionals in clinical engineering. I think that one strategy that we may apply is to agree on what knowledge has to be taught at school and what capabilities may be taught outside the school as a continuous education programs or even the certifications like Ricardo said. In my university, for example, there is an kind of opposite thought for certification because some people think that it is not, it doesn't have the quality that a professional may have to comply in the outside, but some other things the opposite. So there is a very friendly, I have to admit, a very friendly discussion about this, and in the way we continue doing this dialogue, we will reach to a point where we, together with the College of Biomedical Engineering, could coordinate these programs so we cannot repeat the information or even worse, get mistaken messages to the students. Thank you.
Thank you, Fabiola. Elliot.
Yes, so to Fabiola's point, if you graduate from a College of Aeronautical Engineering, you can't fly airplanes. You have to pass the licensure test. If you go to a school in physics or radiation physics, or you can't become a medical physicist without passing the exam. So there are things we can teach in content, and there are things that are experiential, and then there are the specifics of an industry that's changing. Academia often trails the industry by a bit because transistors, integrated circuits, AI, products sometimes emerge before the textbooks catch up some years later. And faculty often is not directly involved in the industrial revolutions that are occurring. The other point that I wanted to make is that one of our colleagues in the Q&A area asked about exact requirements for us to be involved in this bootstrapping of our own conformity assessment. Let me go back 20 years. The Healthcare Technology Foundation that Yadin and Toby Clark and a lot of prior ACCE presidents created, part of its goal was to resurrect the CCE program in the US because it had been discontinued and the clinical engineers no longer had a place to obtain or maintain their CCE. And so we created within HTF a HTCC, which is correctly led by Ricardo, the Healthcare Technology Certification Commission. So in that case, the Healthcare Technology Foundation was the scheme holder. The HTCC was a separate body that was responsible for creating and overseeing the certification, and I sat on that body as a founding member and the creation, and then a third body, the certification testing body, was created. There were very firm firewalls between each of those bodies within HTF. So there was no interference upwards telling downwards what to do. Each one was tasked separately. The I gave another example in the text box, in the chat box, with information about what those terms mean and how it's done in the US with conformity assessment. But we collectively have a lot of experience on how to bootstrap such a system and program. And it's a series of checks and balances. And it is not meant to be an open, porous gateway. It's meant to be restrictive, but it's not meant to be unreasonably restrictive. And the whole idea is to improve everyone's performance and careers. I'll tell you personally, I was the president of ACCE, and then I was the co-founder of the Healthcare Technology Foundation, and then I was on the HTCC. I ultimately resigned from the HTCC and waited 2 years to apply for me to take that physical and oral testing for the CCE. I did not want there to be any question that I had any undue interference or influence in whether I did or did not pass the CCE exam. I never saw the test questions. I never spoke with the examiners. And I can tell you, it was pretty darn hard.
But you got it, right?
I did get it, and I still maintain it, and I'm proud of it.
Admirable, admirable. Right, so colleagues and everyone in this town hall, thank you for staying so far. We're not done yet. With your permission, I would like to share a final slide, if I may, because I'm going to present a number of issues which are called proposed next steps. See, do you see it?
Yes, yes.
You do? Right, thank you. So, whoops, I do apologize. These are my suggestions. Again, you know, we've got a great number of the right people, experts in this town hall, and all regions represented. So this is how I see it. We haven't had time to properly engage. When I say we, I mean part of the credentialing project team. But I would like to believe that this is the sentiment that has been shared in previous meetings. So the one issue that arose was that there should be a working group created in order to drive this process forward. But to a number of us, I think that is a large task, considering the complexity, as you probably all realize, and you even before this town hall. But in fact, you know, a couple of layers to that complexity have been added in this meeting. And so the suggestion is that there's a steering committee that is established that'll essentially be high-level coordination, have a high-level coordination, big picture responsibility, and that will accept inputs from the regional working groups. As I've said, and as others have said, there are great nuances within regions, but also within different bodies of practice, which may or may not be aligned to regions. But the one important task of the steering committee would be to draft a roadmap going forwards. In terms of composition or criteria for membership, it could be drawn from members of the current project team, but if anyone in this call would really like to volunteer to be a member of that committee, please let us know. I think in terms of fairness, it would be appropriate, as I indicated earlier, that there is one member, at least, from each of the WHO regions. That is how many of the major languages will be covered. And it may be that not all major languages are covered. And is that acceptable? Is that something that one can work around? And I would think that is one of the questions that would be put by the steering committee to the respective regional groups. So again, in terms of the working group per region, what would be the criteria for membership? What would be the terms of reference? again, the steering committee could establish and share those criteria for comments by volunteers for those working groups per region. And perhaps that is something that we can commit to starting after this town hall, that colleagues from the different regions, that they agree to be part at least of the initial working group for their region. In terms of other tasks and issues, as we have addressed already, and as many of you are aware of, we are dealing with a terminology soup. There's so many different acronyms and terms that pertain to credentialing, certification, accreditation, etc. And to do us well to establish a glossary where there's clarity and alignment, certainly to within this space, within the IFMB, ECD, and GCEA space, as to what the different terms refer to specifically. Then on the issue of body of knowledge, I think the one particular challenge, I mean, Elliot referred to plastic surgeons, but I think, this is both a challenge and a huge opportunity, but also a realization of just how broad clinical engineering actually is. If we think about it, the clinical engineering body of knowledge includes the project management body of knowledge, which is a very well-established and accepted body of knowledge. So that, if you like, is a simple plug-in. Obviously, there are components of the PMBOK that may be less important to clinical engineering, but certainly many of those do, in terms of project planning, in terms of resource scheduling, in terms of risk management. All of those are very relevant to. Then there's the ISO 55000 series of standards on engineering asset management. And as I've presented at previous conferences, health technology management is pretty much engineering asset management applied to health technologies and even to health infrastructure. And then the 40,000 series on facility management. And then closer to home, and one thinks particularly of the IFMBE, there's a division for health technology assessment. HTA is also very much aligned and very much relevant to clinical engineering. And some have advocated that health technology assessment can play a very important role and should play an important role in governing the life cycle management of health technologies in general and medical devices in particular. So again, as I see it, we need to create templates for country, multinational, and regional certification credentialing systems, incorporating, if you like, best practice, body of knowledge, and bodies of practice. The countries, organizations, or regions that have got existing certification or credentialing systems need to complete that template so that we've got a uniform body, if you like, of evidence. And likewise, countries such as Poland with EVA as an advocate, with clearly recognized needs for credentialing, likewise should be asked to and should be willing to complete a template that clearly captures their needs as they see them in terms of both not only professional and individual needs, but also country needs. Also importantly, and this has come home to me again very recently with our recent engagement in South Africa with the Engineering Council of South Africa, and also noting that the World Federation for Engineering Education, they have their global congress in Cape Town later this year, is to explore alignment and advocacy with formal engineering registration certification frameworks and bodies. Adrian Richards in the chat has alluded to some of these challenges in the Australian case. And I think what we need to do here is again, go in and make sure that we can clearly assert and state that we belong at the big table. What is the clinical engineering value proposition? After all, global health is a social good. Surely that needs to be recognized by our fellow engineering practitioners. And then last but not least, what other linkages should we explore, could we explore? One thinks of the WHO Academy. Describing that academy why should not clinical engineering be within that academy and supported within that academy? And what other links are there? So that is my, if you like, closing slide. And for the rest of the time, I will open the floor to colleagues for their comments and suggestions. Thank you. Eva and then Ricardo.
Thank you very much. I would like to share with our experiences from efforts to organize education in Poland from the beginning, because I have said many times that, of course, there was a course of clinical engineering, but there were no candidates. I have explained it, but so we decided to cut this loop, and we now we want to organize education from the beginning to meet international requirements. So what we see as problems now. So I am talking about such need of the guideline for such countries, because we have to do it step by step. I think that one point is literature, because of course body of knowledge and practice is a compendium of requirements, but we also need suggestions or references for the sources of this knowledge, because we have to translate those books or other literature into Polish, because we have to offer education, our courses in Polish. We do not have literature in Polish language, so we will need to we will ask you, yes, and we will need to get references. I think some books and maybe papers, and we will have to translate it into Polish and prepare a literature for our students, because they have to have books to study. Yes. So it is one need. I think that it will take time. So we want to start now. And another thing is staff. Those are lecturers, because actually in Poland we have generation gap, because specialists from my generation is just going on retire, and now and after us there are gap, because there was no education for several years. So it's a problem how it would be possible to organize this education when we do not have specialists to deliver it. Of course, there is a plenty of resources on Alliance and CD, but in English. So my idea, and I see that the solution is to get the literature which is recommended for education, which will meet body of knowledge and practice requirements, and then based on this we will translate it. Based on it, we will prepare the program, and we will be looking for lecturers for those subjects. So I think that several countries which are not using English will have the same problem, because all recommendations are in English. But in countries where there is no very very developed clinical engineering. There is no literature in this native language. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eva. I think that would fall under point 5 that you see as the template that would go to the countries. But I think also there's a strong overlap between much of what you've said and the capacity building project of the GCA and CED. And so that's where the interlinkages with the other projects, I think, come into play and become quite important. Then I'm going to Antonio Hernandez. Welcome, Antonio. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, Maladen. I'm glad to share some of my experience. I was very involved in certification for 20 years, not for the last 10 years, but I have been following all the developments because I truly believe certification, credentialing is necessary. However, I'm speaking for the medium and low income countries. I reached the conclusion that unless these certification and credentialing programs are part of a public policy, a national policy, we will not in this level of countries advance too much. And one of the reasons is because there are some actors in these countries that are also involved in whatever decision is dealing with education or certification. And those are not only the Ministry of Health, but the Ministry of Education and other certification bodies in the engineering field or professional societies. Not to say that still we have some pending issues with the International Labor Organization and the recognition of the biomedical engineering as a professional. And that is the scope the countries take in order to accept a profession, because that has implication mainly in the public sector. So there are many roadblocks that we need still to work with in order to advance. I believe that if the more developed or the developed countries has strong certification bodies and models that could be used as a reference to the other countries, that will help in advancing this type of programs. However, again, we need public policies dealing with the need of having certified persons in the field of technology working in the health sector. Otherwise, it will be difficult to have it, mainly if something that is voluntary but not required for any specific position. And I want to finish with an anecdote, what bringing certification programs to countries could be ending. It was the example of Costa Rica and Mexico when Adriana was in the Senetec, and it's a very nice anecdote, but Mexico was supporting Costa Rica in certifying clinical engineers, and it ended in the State Department of both countries complaining one to another, and it was kind of an interesting situation. I just bring this issue because it shows how an initiative could escalate to the highest levels. But I think we have still a lot of work in front of us. Thank you, Malan.
Thank you, Antonio, for introducing a dose of realpolitik. But I think what your comments also did is once again underline the linkage with another project, and that is policy and impact measurement. And again, you know, if the steering committee and the working groups are aligned with the WHO regions, then perhaps the WHO also can become an ally in our cause, in if you like, advocating for the importance of recognizing clinical engineering and health technology management practitioners in each region and in all regions. And perhaps that is something that, as part of a strategy, the steering committee needs to take up. But colleagues, we are getting close to the end. We are already over time. So if you allow me, Chairman's prerogative, to say that we'll take brief comments from Ricardo, Elliot, and then have closing comments from Fabiola on behalf of the CED and Yadin on behalf of the GCEA. Over to you.
Really quick, Madden. I like what Antonio said, and yes, voluntary certification. There is another ISO that we have not talked about, the ISO 13485, which is quality management for organizations that deal with medical devices and need to comply with regulatory requirements. As to the best of my knowledge, only medical device manufacturers thus far are ISO 13485 certified. I would love to see clinical engineer departments certified under this guiding document. That would be a great step forward in the direction of accreditation of the profession and the recognition that we deserved worldwide. Over.
Thank you, Ricardo. I think that's food for thought. I do know, just speaking from personal experience of the South African experience, it is extremely expensive, essentially, especially for countries such as ours, to actually get that certification of compliance. But I think the point is well taken. Thank you. Elliot?
Yes, I just want to orally repeat what I put in the chat box, because people watching the video won't see the chat necessarily. A question was asked about how about OEM manufacturers whose people have been trained to repair their equipment? Why would they be motivated to do some certification? The first part of the answer is that if they are working for a manufacturer that is under a good manufacturing practice in the US or around the world, they have to train and qualify and maintain the qualifications of their personnel. If they fail to do that, they should and do lose their licensure or their ability to manufacture devices. That individual may only be qualified to work on one brand and one model within that manufacturer line. If they want to generalize their ability to service a different MRI or to work on a different ventilator or anesthesia device, they could reasonably take additional training and sit for the generalized exam. Another question was raised about internationalization and recognition. A plastic surgeon can't simply fly from the US to France and start practicing a plastic surgery. They have to be properly licensed and recognized for that skill in France. A pilot can fly a plane from France into the US, but they can't then move and walk into an American Airlines flight and fly it to California. There are constraints on what is recognized and what is accepted at a governmental level and regulatory level. Creating a globally, internationally accepted recognition will be challenging at the practice level. That doesn't mean that we can't recognize different certifications in our college, if you will, and in our journals. That's a different situation than allowing someone to go in and try to calibrate an anesthesia device or deal with radiology safety. So I think that there are many things we can do now, and the future offers many very positive alternatives for us to pursue. Thank you, Milad, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Elliot. Thank you. I think that kind of brings it nicely to a close. So all that's left for me is to thank each one of you for your contributions and input. Obviously, we as the team will have to go and reflect on what has been said and also summarize and share with everybody in this town hall, and also make available on both websites the outputs from this town hall, as for the other town halls. So all remains for me now is for ask Fabiola and Yadin from their perspectives to close this town hall.
Thank you, Mladen. On behalf of the Global Clinical Engineering Alliance, I'm delighted to see the report you and Fabiola presented today, and the advances that are made in specifically certification program. I would like to remind everybody that this is part of the Global Clinical Engineering Week, another example of how we moved from celebrating a day of accomplishments to a week, because there's so much we are doing and accomplishing every day, and that we definitely have the interest to lead the international activity looking forward, and certification is just one of the part, and tomorrow we'll have the policy report together with Fabiola and CED, and thank you very much for leading today's event.
Thank you, Yadin. I see from a note that Fabiola left us a while ago, so on her behalf, if I may, also express thanks from the CED perspective. As I said at the beginning of this town hall, that this is a joint initiative. We're in this together, better together. I apologize for some of the logistic issues at the beginning of the town hall, but once again wish to thank all of you, both panelists and participants, for your comments in the chat, for your questions, answers. If you have further comments and issues that you'd like to bring to our attention, there are the email addresses for Fabiola and myself. We would very much like to hear from you. But once again, thank you all for this insightful and very important town hall. And I wish you a good day. Thank you.
Thanks, Mladen. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you
all.
Great meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.